You know, out on my website, I've got a little thing. It's a daily blog where I talk about what we're doing each day. And we just got through building some cabinets. And a lot of the guys ask about the shelf supports we used. We've used them forever. And where they came from was back many years ago. We were building a lot of stuff and entertainment centers and all kind of things. And we kept finding a need for shelves that would hold a good amount of weight. I remember one we did, it was going to hold this big massive widescreen TV, and that was before they got skinny and little. So we had to have something that would hold them up, and bookcases and everything. And we all know about the shelf supports. You know, most of the time you drill a hole and you got a little clip goes in it, and they do fine. You know, and it's typically what's used out here. But in our case, where we do a lot of furniture and high-end furniture, you really don't want those clips in there. That's kind of a modern day thing. Plus, like I said, you want something that really can take some weight. So here's what we came up with, and we've used them forever. Now, it's kind of a takeoff of some of the old antique ones that's been around out there. And we just kind of made it simpler, and we do it. And it's very, very simple. All we do, and this is just a mock-up just to show you, all we do is we have a strip that's notched, and into it sets just a cross piece. It's that simple. Not difficult at all. The only thing is that you have to use a laminated piece to make your supports. Because just using a piece of regular wood where the grain is all running in the same direction, this area is very prone to break. It's not going to carry a tremendous amount of weight. So what we do is we typically make our own plywood. And we'll show you that. And all it is that we take and laminate a piece of 1/4 inch stock, grain running, in this case vertical, another piece of 1/4 inch stock where the grain is running horizontal, and then another vertical piece. The same thing, and here's a piece of plywood that we've made some out of. It's virtually the same thing. We've got the vertical and the horizontal running grains. That's what gives it the strength. Now, in this, where I've attached it here, it's just simply 3 screws holding it to the side of the case. You don't have to glue it and do all of that. And the reason for that is that the weight, whatever's going on it, is bearing straight down. It also, the cleat here that holds it, in order for this to break, you have to do a tremendous amount of shear pressure. And that means that you literally have to shear this in the notch, and you have to shear it out here. You're not going to do it. Now, the other neat thing about it is that particularly in kitchen cabinets, I like doing them, and I like it particularly in the bottom cabinets, because it allows me a great deal of versatility. Now, what I will do, assuming that this would be the bottom of a case, is I'll make my shelf, and I just notch it to fit around my shelf support, and then I'll make another shelf, and I can set it in like this. Now obviously they'd be a little wider so they come together, and I've got a full shelf. Or I can put one in one direction, I can put one in the other, and I can get 2 half shelves. It's pretty endless as to what you can do with it. You can just do all kind of different things. I've actually taken them and put them in the middle here, and like if I got a stile going down the middle, put 2 there, and I can make them adjust this side and this side. The other neat thing about it is that you can actually really get up tight. In other words, up tight to the top or to the bottom. That's nice, particularly in entertainment centers where you've got DVD players or, you know, satellite, whatever the case may be, or your cable box. You need a little small area for some of those electronics to go. So what this allows is you can actually, even when you get tight, you can stick the shelf in and simply slide your cleat in, and your shelf is set. do really nice. Now in this case, we've got it, what we'll call the teeth coming out. Now if you had a rail or stile going down through here rather, it would cover that. But if you've got a narrow one, you can also mount them flat. You don't necessarily have to go like that. And the cleat, same thing. Cleat just goes right in between. Makes for super strong shelves, and they're pretty easy to make. And we're going to look at that. Average, what I usually do, the space, this is 3/4 of an inch, but it doesn't have to be. You can make them any width, your notch, any weight, any width you want, and your cleats. You can make them bigger, smaller, whatever what suits you. And the only tough part about them at all, and there's not one, is that, you know, you got to glue up and, you know, your shop made plywood. We normally do it out of just bits and scraps and whatever, and there it is. Really does work nice. We usually finish them to match and get on up the road. The plywood ones do well also. Now, an alternative to using the plywood or doing this in here is I've also done them where I've actually cut the teeth and then drilled them and put a 1/4 inch dowel in it. But that's a lot of work and effort. I like the plywood better. Let's take a look at how we make them. Okay guys, we've seen the way the shelf supports work. Now let's see how to make them. My preference, and what I usually do, is I simply usually resaw some of whatever it is I'm using, and then I also just take scraps and I glue them up, and then I resaw them, and what I get is an end grain. Now this one's a little squirrely. The end grain kind of does that. And by end grain, what I'm talking about is I've glued them up and the grain's running this way. That's exactly what I want, because this is how I make my shop made or my plywood. Now don't let that little squirrely part there bother you. Then I simply take, and usually I do a 1/4, a 1/4, and a 1/4. Then I just simply laminate them together, glue them up, and that gives me the material for my shelf supports. Now here's some of that. Now what I do is I just simply cut them. I usually cut them to about 1 3/8 inches, 1.5 inches, because I usually want a finished piece about 1 1/4 inches. And I just simply tape them together to keep them all uniform. Now the other thing I do, because we're going to, in this data, when we're cutting, we're going to be cutting into and exiting flat grain that is running lengthways. And that's always prone to chip out. So I always put this little piece of 1/4 inch plywood. I put it on there for a backer board. Simple as that.